Good evening, writers. Welcome to the final episode of our series on the writing minutia. We're going to be talking about something that is, in essence, what all writing advice is about: word choice. We've touched on this issue before, especially in our work on adjectives and adverbs and on the word said. Using the right words at the right time is essentially what it means to have good writing. Unfortunately, knowing the difference between the right and the wrong word is no easy task, as there are functionally infinite possibilities when it comes to writing. Every time you write, you're constantly making decisions on what words to use and what words you're not using. How you make these decisions is an essential part of what gives your writing your own voice. There's little direct advice I can give here, because every sentence you write is countless opportunities for different word choices or different ways to express them, and it's really up for you as a writer to determine how you want your writing to look. But there are some very general and surprisingly specific tips to make better word choices as a whole, no matter what you're writing about. So what do I mean by good word choice? As I mentioned in the video about the word said, there are two different classes of words: function words and content words. And good word choice in both of these words have very different meanings. Good word choice for your function words is about saying exactly what you mean with the minimum amount of words attached. It's about using the perfect conjunctions to connect your ideas together. It's about precise prepositions to describe where things are. It's about not shying away from saying a same word over and over again because it's an action that is happening over and over again. Similarly, good content words is also about saying exactly what you mean by using the word that describes exactly what you're trying to get across. It's about perfect noun selection and evocative verbs. The difference here lies in that function words have a very limited vocabulary. There's only a set number of ways to say something stands before another thing or is under another thing. Whereas with content words like nouns and verbs, there are almost an infinite number of ways that you can describe things in the real world. So there's much more potential for incredible word choice, in the same way that there's potential for extremely bad word choice. Good word choice here is about using a word that means exactly what you want it to mean, especially when that meaning is irregular or unexpected or is used in a way that is not typical of that word. Here, a good word is something that is so perfect that the mere expression of that word gives the readers paragraphs worth of information about what's going on. It's about compressing the very complex definitions and histories of words into a single moment. It's about communicating as much meaning in a single word as you can possibly muster. Be careful though, because I'm not necessarily talking about using an obscure word that requires the reader to look it up in a dictionary in order to understand what you're talking about. Even the most common of words can be the perfect word to use in a certain situation. Reading poetry is a good way to understand the power that single words can have on meaning. All good poets are masters of word choice, and if you're looking to improve your word choice, reading poetry is possibly the best way to go about it. Of course, when you are trying to make better word choices in your writings, here are some general tips to make sure that you're doing it in a good way. First, be careful with synonyms. The sources are for experts only, and I seriously mean that. There's no such thing as a true synonym. Every word has its own set of connotations and word associations and will convey different emotions to the reader. Be very careful about replacing one word for another unless you're very certain you know what it means. Because even if it appears in a thesaurus next to it or its dictionary definition is functionally similar to the one you replaced it with, it could carry some extraordinary connotations that it just aren't represented by the way you're using it. And this can create a lot of disconnect with the reader who is familiar with the word in this context being used in a completely different context. Second, use multiple dictionaries. The fact is, there are often many different ways that a particular word is used, and if you rely on a simple dictionary, you might not actually get the full picture of the meaning of those words. This is especially true for newer words, controversial words, words with contested histories, or ones that are trying to be recontextualized by certain groups. The dictionary definition of a word may not be an accurate representation of what that word means, or it might just be outdated and its meaning has shifted since the time the dictionary was written. This is also true if words are more obscure and have connotations or meanings that aren't necessarily documented by the dictionary. Etymology dictionaries can be very helpful here because knowing the history of a word, where it came from, how its meaning has changed over time, and what context has been used in the past can give you a lot of insight on how to use this word in its proper context. Generally speaking, if you're not sure how to use a word properly, try to find excerpts from writers who have used the word in their own writing. And now the third point. Seriously know exactly what you're saying. High school teachers love to tell you to use big and fancy words, and though it is true that they might impress essay graders, only if they're used perfectly, mind you. In all other forms of writing, it should be avoided on principle. But why is that? Well, it's simple. Words exist to convey meaning and should be used specifically for that purpose. If you start using big or obscure words in order to show off that you know this big or obscure word, you're taking attention away from actually telling people what you want to say and instead focusing on, look how well I can express my ideas. This is especially dangerous because if you use the word even the smallest bit wrong, it will reveal the fact that you looked it up in the thesaurus and a dictionary and aren't quite using it properly. And even worse, if people aren't familiar with the word, they can feel left out of the conversation unless they go to a dictionary, define the word, and if that doesn't help them for the reasons listed above, then they're not really being told any meaning at all, and you've ended up creating a sentence that isn't communicating something to its reader. Generally speaking, whenever you're writing, it's best to use the simplest words possible to say whatever it is you want to say. Though simplest, of course, doesn't always mean simple. If your ideas are complex, there may not be a simple way to express them, but that doesn't mean you should give up on simplicity. The more complex your ideas, the simpler and easier to understand you want the language to be, because you don't want your ideas lost in the field of complex expression. You want people understanding and hearing what you're saying so that they can work through the complex idea and understand what it is you were trying to tell them. And if you bar your ideas behind a gate of words that are either obscure or fundamentally difficult to understand, then you're fundamentally excluding the readers from your idea and blocking them from the pathway to understanding. And as writers, you want to never do that. You always want your writing to be accessible to as many people as possible. There is no reason to try and make your ideas more obscure or difficult to parse. Finally, and perhaps the most important thing when it comes to word choice, have fun with your words. A good word used well is an amazing thing for both you and the reader. This often involves paying good attention to the way that words sound, whether or not you're intending to speak it aloud. Words that sound good together will make your work more engaging and more dynamic. A well-placed rhyme in the middle of a sentence will wow your audience every occasion. Enjoy wordplay. Relish in the rhythm of your words. Turn your sentences into works of poetry. The more enjoyable it is for your writing to read, the better it is for everyone. Go for it. Make your readers enjoy every second of your work. Get them entranced by the rhythm of your speech. Make them pay attention to every syllable, to the ups and downs of everything that's happening. Because if they can get entranced by the way you're expressing things, there's no way that they're not going to be entranced by what you're expressing. The best of writing is able to weave wordplay and content together to make an enjoyable reading experience in every way. That, in essence, is what good writing is. It's entrancing the reader to every second of your writing so that they enjoy the experience and remember it fondly. Thank you for watching this episode of the Young Writers Vlog and for following our series on the Minutia of Writing. If you have any questions or suggestions for videos you want to see, leave a comment down below. And so, until next time, make sure to have fun with your writing and to keep on doing it.